Welcome back, everybody. It is May 2nd, Monday. Got to check my computer. I am John Aravosis here in Chicago. I should normally be in DC, but visited Ma in Chicago for a few weeks. Let me go live on TikTok as we speak, and we will get this shoe rolling. Feel free to introduce yourselves while I get TikTok going. Just always like to have people kind of say where you're hailing from. Let me see TikTok here. Manda Bear, you're first. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it, Manda Bear. Hey, everybody on TikTok. Join us along with our friends on YouTube. Good to see everybody. As always, we take about 5 minutes to have folks kind of join us. It takes about that long for people to be notified and to come on in. So come on in. I think we got good news today. A mix of news, but actually pretty good news. I've got some good news, at least. I saw some scary news on CNN, so I reached out to some of the generals online using TikTok, and a bunch of them got back to me, which was very cool. So I'm going to tell you what they told me. Again, way better news than what I was hearing on CNN. I did see there was something on 60 Minutes America on last night on Sunday that I still need to watch. A friend of mine sent me a very short clip that was really biting. But anyway, I've got to check that out. Anyway, hey guys, we are just taking the first couple minutes till 5 after to let folks filter in. CNN's great, actually. No. CNN's great. CNN's amazing. But they just had a general on today who's a very good general, but he was super pessimistic and scared the hell out of me. So I wanted to TikTok and ask the other generals, and I said, okay, what's he talking about? So I will report to you on what they told me. It was kind of cool. This is why I love social media is a cesspool, but it's kind of cool too. I mean, it's cool that I can reach out to a bunch of former U.S. generals and they could all get back to me within an hour on TikTok. On Twitter. There's no way for that to happen anywhere else. It's very cool. I was just going to say, see, somebody else on TikTok saw the same thing I did. So yes, I've never worked for CNN. I've gone on CNN a lot in the past just as a pundit, but I would love to work for CNN. I think they're good. I really do. I know people give them a hard time, but especially this with all the Ukraine stuff, CNN's been amazing with their coverage. Hola. All right, guys. Like I said, we'll go till 5 after, so another 2 minutes, just giving folks a little time to filter in on TikTok. Hello, TikTokers and YouTubers, and also some Facebook and Twitter folks. Hello from Spain. Yeah, just let folks know where you're from. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention to the countries here, where everybody was from. I mean, beyond the normal. I know the regulars where you guys are from, but Ooh, thirsty today. Put on my glasses. Denmark, lovely. UK, of course. Yeah, it was very cool. It was very cool, PB. I was very excited. I was kind of like, whoa. And then they just, I didn't even ask McCaffrey to weigh in. I was like, whoa, that was interesting. So it was pretty cool. All right, guys, another minute and then we'll dive right in. As I said, I'm John Aravosis here in Chicago instead of DC. Ukrainian, but in Australia, that works too. New York, we got a number of Ukrainians weighing in from all over the world. Give them some, hey Finland, give them some love on TikTok. Let's throw some sunflowers in there for our Ukrainians who are visiting. Scotland, Barcelona, Australia, DC. That's somebody's got. I'm in DC too normally. What do you do? Okay, good. We got the sunflowers popping up on Wales. Lovely. We always love to introduce. Well, I'll kind of start slowly now. Anyway, we've got enough folks on TikTok and YouTube who've arrived. Thank you for the corgi. We like to sort of whenever there's a Ukrainian that graces us with their presence on TikTok or YouTube, we like to sort of throw sunflowers at them because sunflowers are the national flower of Ukraine, and it's our little way of saying hello and hang in there. We're with you. The other funny thing is that when the bad Russian trolls come, and we can identify them as bad Russian trolls, we throw sunflowers at them too, but for entirely different reasons that I probably can't explain on TikTok without getting thrown off, or maybe YouTube as well. Anyway, I'm John Aravosis. Welcome, everybody. Glad to see we got a good audience today. The way this works is I start off, and I got you TikTokers there. I've got YouTubers at all here, and this is why you will see me go back and forth, because I'm doing both of you guys today. I will take about 20 minutes or so to give the news today that I think is important. why it matters, the most important stuff. I won't cover everything, obviously, because there's too much news, and we get into a lot of it in the question and answer period. That comes afterwards, usually around 25 after, 30 after we get to question and answer, and we hang out until quarter after the next hour. Thank you for the hat. To do the Q&A. I ask folks to put on TikTok, put your questions. There's a little box at the bottom of the screen that says Q&A for question and answer. Thank you for the origami. Click that box, put your question in there, and it makes it easier for me later on to pull up all the questions and look at them. On YouTube, you know the story. Use the post a comment box at the bottom. And excuse me, allergies again today. Anybody who is so kind as to do a super chat question on YouTube, I always promise I will get to that. Assuming I see it, I will get to it as the next question I do as a thank you for supporting my work. As always, and I don't like to harp on this, but I'm doing this full time. So when you guys do the super chat questions or when you do the fun stuff on TikTok, you're actually helping support my work. And it's fun too anyway, like the TikTok stuff especially. I think it helps lighten up a very serious topic. So, all right, guys, let's jump right in. So the couple top stories, okay, I'm going to make this one the top story, but it's not really news. The State Department said today that Russia is looking at annexing Donetsk and Luhansk, which are basically the regions in the east. Thank you, Sassy and Patrice. Russia plans to annex the eastern Ukrainian regions, the breakaway regions that aren't really breakaway regions. They're regions that Russia has been fomenting revolution in for 8 years, but they're not really breakaway regions, excuse me. And so Russia's looking at annexing them and annexing the town of Kherson in the south. And they may do that as early as the middle of the month, maybe even a little bit later, like the 20th or so. Again, this isn't really news. I think we already knew that Russia was going to try to steal the East, so big surprise. And Kherson, they clearly made clear in the last couple of days, Kherson's the town where they're now starting to use rubles. They're putting up Russian flags. They're requiring them to use the Russian curriculum in school, right? They've totally tried to turn it into this Russian town, which is ridiculous. But in any case, so I don't think it's a surprise that they're annexing. I think this was to be expected. Not good, but to be expected. Thank you for the galaxy on TikTok. I like that one. I did want to start with a very interesting thing that happened to me on Twitter, which also gives us a nice sense of where things stand. I will give you the spoiler right now and say things are pretty good for Ukraine in terms of what's going on in eastern Ukraine right now. Thank God. There was a report on CNN earlier, and I like CNN. They've done actually amazing for an American, because I don't watch the foreign networks, but for the American networks, I would say they've done the best reporting internationally on what's going on in Ukraine. And they had Spider Marks on, who is a former U.S. general, very well known. And Marks was talking, and the host even kind of came back and asked him again. And Marks said twice that he thinks the Russians are going to annex everything from the Dnipro River east. So this is basically from Kyiv in the north. The river goes through Kyiv and comes down. If you look at the map, you'll kind of see this river going through the capital and coming down. A good third to maybe 2/5 of the country he thinks the Russians are going to annex, or not annex, but occupy, and it could take years for the Ukrainians to get it back. Well, I heard that and I was like, oh my God. Like, this is the worst news I've heard. Like, since the war started, and it contradicted everything the other experts have been saying. So I got on Twitter, and I do love Twitter because for exactly the reason I'm going to tell you, which is why I love Twitter. Twitter can be a cesspool, but for this purpose. So I got on there and I simply wrote it up. I said, hey, this is what General Marks said on CNN. It seems, I said, it seemed decidedly less optimistic than I hear from, and I mentioned several American generals and thank you for the hat, several American generals and a colonel. So Hertling, for anybody who knows, General Hertling, General Zwack, and Colonel Layton were the big three because I love them on CNN. They're amazing. They're big former American military guys that are just amazing. They know their stuff. And I said, sounded less optimistic than you guys. Do you care to weigh in? Well, they all weighed in and then some. I'll tell you sort of what they said. Hertling was the first to respond. Hertling was the head of the U.S. Army in Europe. Very good guy. He simply responded and said, I disagree with him on a lot of things, which meaning the other general. And I was kind of like, whoa, okay. I kind of felt like I walked into a fight there, but basically clearly saying he doesn't agree with him. McCaffrey weighed in. General McCaffrey, Barry McCaffrey, who's another big general who I didn't even ask to weigh in, but I think Hertling, they must all follow each other. McCaffrey weighed in. He also disagreed. He said the Ukrainian leadership Ukraine is showing extraordinary leadership and courage, and the Western arms support will make them stronger each day. So meaning they're doing really well, and as the new Western weapons come in, Ukraine's going to do even better. So he did not see the Russians taking over the east. Colonel Layton, Cedric Layton, also very good. He was one of the ones I messaged. He weighed in. He said the Russians clearly want to take over the east, but he is skeptical they can pull it off. Malcolm Nance weighed in. Lovable Malcolm Nance, who I love. Friend of mine. People who know him. Otherwise, former U.S. military, intelligence, very involved over the years. He had a very prominent presence on MSNBC about military issues and other things, and now is over in Ukraine fighting as part of the Ukrainian Foreign Legion as a volunteer. And Malcolm weighed in and said they will need 1 million men, the Russians, and risk losing 90% of them, meaning they would need literally 1 million men and just shove the men west, like in a big line, 1 million of them. And as the Ukrainians are shooting them off, the other ones just keep walking. And he said they'll still lose 90% of them. It's not going to happen. The final one to weigh in was one of the ones I did see, General Zwack. And General Zwack said, this was very interesting from General Zwack. He's another one on CNN. Very good. His was interesting. Wizit, thank you for that. Zwack said his concern is that a ceasefire could permit Russia to reinforce. That was a very interesting one. In other words, he agrees with the others. He doesn't think Russia, as it's going, Russia is going to be able to take over the East, right? Things are just not going well. But thank you, Melissa. I do love that one. And the lights. But his concern is that if we reach some kind of, peace thing, and my guess is he may be worried about allied powers coming in and saying, oh, this would be, let's just cool things off and have both sides stop fighting kind of thing and take a pause. That if we take a pause, Russia's going to reinforce all its troops. That currently, thank you for the duck, currently things are going, I'm extrapolating now from what he was saying, but currently things are going well for Ukraine. Ukraine's got the momentum. Russia's doing poorly, and I mentioned this yesterday, Russia is stalling. Russia is stalling in their effort out east. They're just kind of, it's imagine like a squall, like a storm stalling. It isn't moving. It's not getting much better. And the concern is that if somebody pressures Ukraine to decide to some kind of ceasefire for a month, let's take our temperature, all it's doing is letting the Russians reinforce. It's letting the Russians rest their troops, send in more troops, sending more weapons. So that I thought was very interesting from him. Anyway, but the thing is, what I love, and not to get too much into this, but Twitter, social media is fascinating for me because I think it is a cesspool. I think there's a lot of bad people out there. But sometimes it allows you to get in touch with folks like this that kind of boggle my mind, because pre-social media, I couldn't reach out. What do we do? Call these guys and ask for comment? I mean, it just, it wouldn't happen. And they just all weighed in. It was very cool. Germany looks like they're agreeing to an oil embargo. Very cool. As you know, everybody would like the Europeans to embargo oil from Russia. Thank you for the little drum set there from Russia. It's difficult because a lot of Europe, God, I'm forgetting the number now again. Maybe Europe was getting 25% of its oil from Russia, but some of the countries get even more individually. While Germany, that was getting 35% and now looks like they're down to 12% of their oil from Russia, came out today. I want to say it was their finance minister, I think. You'd think it would be the energy, but I thought it was finance minister. It came out and said that Germany is basically prepared to get off of, thank you for that, Lima, is prepared to stop using Russian oil, to get off its Russian oil dependence. Now, the kink potentially, although it may not be, is Reuters was saying that Hungary and Slovakia are the two countries that are not really thrilled. Hungary even put out a statement today saying there's no way we're embargoing the oil. I didn't say West Germany, did I? I'm hoping I didn't. Somebody wrote West Germany. I may have. Russia gets me thinking of the Soviet days, but Hungary and Slovakia do not want to embargo, and the European Union may create an exemption for them so that they can get all the other members to agree. And that if they create an exemption for Hungary and maybe Slovakia, those states won't veto European Union agree. So that could be huge news, very huge news. Mariupol evacuation has stalled. From what I heard, nobody new had gotten out of Mariupol. Thank you for that, Lima. The Russians have been bombing. I mean, apparently ever since a number of the folks were gotten out yesterday, right? 100 or so civilians, the Russians have just been bombing, and they can't get anybody out because the Russians are being idiots. And frankly, it's part of the Russian strategy. Boom. Thank you. It's part of the Russian strategy to play games with civilians. It's what they do. Thank you for that, Cami. The patrol boats. Okay, very cool video. I felt kind of bad. Well, that's not true. I didn't feel bad. Hold on. I was forgetting this isn't a gross video. I had a video yesterday that I did not show you guys because it was a little bit heavy. You could see, Russian soldiers who were injured trying to crawl out of a car that was bombed. I wasn't going to show you that, but I am wondering if it's synced here. Not yet. We can see. Oh, hold on. It's a video because there's a video kind of cool. I mean, it depends what you're into. Some of you might find it a little weird, but there's a video of the Ukrainians released a video showing them bombing I got it here. Good. 2 Russian patrol boats off of Odessa in the Black Sea there, down below, the big sea below Ukraine, and 2 Russian patrol boats, each one military, each one has a capacity of carrying 20 service members. They blew up using a Bayraktar. I'm going to double check. Bayraktar, that's a drone, which is the Turkish drone that they've been using to great effect. Huge thing. Thank you, Painter, for that. They blew up both of them using the drones, and I will show you the video really quick because it's not gory or anything. It's kind of impressive to see, but again, it's boats getting blown up. Oops, did it start? Oh, it started. Oh, hang on. Sorry, go back to the video. It did start. I went too quickly here. Okay, here we go. This is the first patrol boat, and the drone's overhead. I mean, literally straight on. And then they showed this. Well, actually, they showed the drone. That's what it looks like. It's a pretty big thing. It looks like a pterodactyl. And then the second boat starts to speed up, which made me think they heard the drone or saw the drone, and then they got it too. I mean, kind of amazing. Don't know anything about survivors. That's a pretty bad explosion. I mean, I don't know a lot about explosions, but that's pretty bad in a boat that isn't that large. 20 people. I think they're going to be pretty injured. What else we got? Oh yeah, more good news. The Ukrainian armed forces report that they've shot down 10 Russian drones in the last day. What's interesting about this, they gave some details. It's called the Orlan 10, the Russian drone, and it costs between $87,000 and $120,000 per drone. So let's say an average of $100,000 per drone. Shooting down 10 of them means it just cost the Russians $1 million. And mind you, 10 drones they lose, which is pretty cool too. There was a fire I think I've got this one. Hang on. There was a fire at an ammunition factory in Perm, Russia. This one's a little weird. This one, we'll see if I got the video here or not. I don't know. Let's see if it syncs or not. This one was, it's about, I looked at the map. It's 1,000 miles into Russia. So thank you for that, Lola. It's 1,000 miles into Russia, which would seem a little far for Ukrainians to be causing mayhem. And, here we go. Oh, no, these are the fires out. This is the fire. I've got pictures of the fires in Siberia, but they're unrelated. Okay. I don't think that's it. No, I don't have it. Okay. I do have it on TikTok, but it's not syncing here on my laptop. But basically the ammunitions depot and ammunitions plant actually blew up in Russia. And the Ukrainians, thank you for that on TikTok. The Ukrainians aren't saying whether they were responsible or not, but pretty much everyone's thinking 1,000 miles is a little too far. They do think that the stuff blowing up in the recently near Ukraine, you've got like 3 different cities. Belgorod is one of them, but a couple other cities where things keep blowing up. That they do think the Ukrainians are responsible for. The stuff that's further out 1,000 miles, they don't think so. Could be sabotage, but what is thinking is the Russians are so bad at, I always love the Borg thing. Thank you. The Russians are so bad at their, not just security. I mean, safety. They're just bad at safety. They blow things up. They blow their plants up. They blow up ammunition that the Russians probably did it themselves being goofballs. The thing is, by the Ukrainians not admitting whether they did it or not, they're leaving this sort of imprimatur, this impression that every time there's an accident in a Russian plant, the Ukrainians did it. And I mean, frankly, even we're falling for it. Thank you for the glasses. Even I saw it and went, holy cow, how did they get that? And it helps because it's creating this perception of the Ukrainians as being all powerful, which frankly inspires Ukrainian citizens even more, but it also freaks out the Russians. It freaks out the Russian troops and it freaks out the Russian civilians thinking, oh my God, these Ukrainians are striking everywhere, right? So it's a psychological play. And that's one big reason it's thought that the Ukrainians aren't admitting whether or not they're responsible for these things, because they want the Russians to start thinking that, every time there's a thunderstorm, it's the Ukrainians that are responsible. So anyway, it's very interesting. Christy, thank you for that. What do I got here? All right, moving ahead. This was kind of interesting. I just saw this before coming on with you guys, but I thought it was an interesting story. The CIA, I see you, Sincere. Let me put that. I will go to that next. The CIA is reaching out to Russian tipsters via the dark web. They made a push. What did they do here? Oh yeah, they took to YouTube and other social media platforms on Monday to basically tell Russians how they can contact the CIA privately and secretly. And they can use VPNs, virtual private networks, Tor. They're basically ways that the Russians can get online and their own government can't even track what they're doing. And the Russians themselves are protected, so the CIA won't even know who they are. It's a very secret way, and saying, if you got tips you want to give us, here's how you do it. So that was kind of a nice little edgy thing to do. Sincere just put a question up. Let me see what he or she's got, and then I'll jump back to the agriculture thing I was going to talk about. Hang on a sec. What are your thoughts about what Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview, that NATO is essentially going to war with Russia through a proxy, Ukraine, and arming that proxy? You know, it's kind of right. I mean, it's funny. Everyone was very nervous about that. And I was like, sure. And the thing is, it's not unusual, though. Russia did it in Vietnam, which I wasn't aware of, but somebody had shared yesterday the information that I forgot what it was that Russia was sharing with the Vietnamese, but basically a lot of the weapons the Vietnamese were using to kill, I think there were planes, actually. There were planes. Thank you for the lights on TikTok. That the actual planes the Vietnamese were using, or North Vietnamese, to kill American pilots were planes given to them by the Russians. And we're worrying about giving planes, to the Ukrainians. So this has clearly become a proxy war, so to speak. I would say at least de facto, not de jure. And what that means is, I don't think it's intentionally a war by the West saying, hey, let's destroy Russia. Woo-woo. That's not what it is. This is clearly the West saying, there is no way in hell we're going to let these people die. We're going to come to the help of these people. And at the same time, Russia has shown how bad they are, how evil they are, how they're turning into the bad old days of the Soviet Union again. And they are now a threat to Western Europe, to Europe, I will say, overall, and to us, frankly, that there's an element of, we are now doing this to stop Russia in addition to saving Ukraine. It's kind of shifted from save Ukraine to stop Russia. So he's not wrong, but big deal. Yeah, I mean, if I were to be speaking diplomatically, I probably wouldn't agree with him, because that may tick people off, but who cares? Who cares? Russia will say anything to buck up its people at home. They're going to accuse us of helping. They're going to accuse us of being at war with them, whatever. I really do. There's a part of me where it's just more Russian lies and more Russian weirdness. So even though in this case it may not be a lie, but let me put it this way. It's a nuance without a difference, I think we call it in the law. Thank you, Toasted, for that. Meaning they're kind of making an obvious point that I feel like, so what? Harvey, let me see what you got here. Not a question, just wondering if you've seen the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Lavrov, stating he believed, yeah. I was going to mention this at the end, but so the Russian foreign minister says yesterday, when he's asked about Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, and says, Zelensky's Jewish. Isn't that weird, accusing him of being a Nazi? And how do you denazify a country when the president's Jewish, right? And Lavrov says, exactly. It's Lavrov says, okay, hold on. Sorry, Lima, thank you for that. Lavrov says, just because you've got, Jewish blood doesn't make you a good person. Hitler had Jewish blood. And so he first compares him to Hitler and says Hitler was a Jew. And from what I'm hearing, I think a lot of people were like, no, Hitler was not part Jewish. That was the first problem. There's more nuanced problem to this, but then he says, and you know what they say, and as soon as he's saying this, thank you, Lima, for that, you're kind of going, oh God, what's he going to say next? You know what they say? Jews are always the worst anti-Semites of all. And you're going, what? Like, since when are Jews are the worst anti-Semites of all? I mean, it was crazy. Lima, you're on a roll, Lima. Thank you for that. The Jewish organizations weighed in. Israel was forced to weigh in, which was really great. Israel was totally forced to weigh in because Israel got so upset about this. Because also what he was suggesting was, when he said Hitler was Jewish, he was suggesting that the Jews were behind the Holocaust, which is a far-right anti-Semitic Holocaust denying trope. It's come up before. The whole idea of, oh, it was the Jews and actually the gay. They threw the gays in too. The Jews and the gays were all behind the Holocaust. Thank you, Brenda, for that. So Israel was forced to weigh in and say, no, the Jews were not behind the Holocaust. It was Germans that killed us. It wasn't Jews. And this whole international thing blew up as a result of this. And the best part was because Israel, you may recall, has been kind of trying to toe the line a little bit because they've got to deal with Russia a lot. Thank you, Brenda. They've got to deal with Russia a lot in terms of what's going on locally in the Middle East, rights to fly over the area where Russian troops are in order to go to the rest of the Middle East. So they've been really towing the line more than we would like. And this forced Israel to take a more public stance against Russia, which is great. So I love it, Harvey. It was a complete, as a journalist called it yesterday, it was a complete self-own. Thank you, Lola, for that. Complete self-own by the Russians. Well, this is kind of a good story too. So agriculture, I don't want to go too long here, but this was a good one. So the Russians have been targeting Ukrainian agriculture, and they're basically trying to starve the Ukrainians, and they're trying to starve the world. They're trying to make an international crisis. Thank you for that, Lima. By stopping Ukraine from being able to, and that too, Gordo, by stopping Ukraine from being able to get its grain to the rest of the world. So then it becomes a whole thing with the rest of the world too, right? Where people don't have food, and then Russia has basically punished the world for being not on its side. Thank you, Brenda. So they've been stealing grain from the Ukrainians. They've been stealing farm equipment. They've been hitting farm facilities. They've been blocking ports, which they still are. They're blocking the Ukrainian ports that the grain would typically go out from, right? So in the last week or something, the last week or two, the Russians go and they steal $5 million of farm equipment from the Ukrainians. $5 million. I mean, crazy. Well, what the Russians didn't know was, and they're bringing it to Chechnya, and that the equipment had GPS on it. It was state-of-the-art farm equipment. It's got GPS on it, so the Ukrainians were tracking it the entire time. Well, it didn't just have GPS. It had a system, anti-theft system, so that you automatically could turn off the equipment and lock it if it's ever stolen. So the Ukrainians basically, I think they waited until it got to Chechnya, and then they locked it. So these idiots had to transport all of this $5 million of farm equipment all the way to Chechnya, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It's totally locked. Total, boom. I just thought it was kind of funny. I mean, it's a horrible story because these poor farmers have lost $5 million worth of equipment, which is ridiculous. But it was really good news that at least they were able to trip them up. But I mean, it's just, actually, I've got a story coming up in a second telling you again about just how cheap the Russians are to these things. If I missed somebody's first question, let me know. I see Music Girl asking. If I missed something, let me know, guys. I know I've got a couple starred questions here. Okay, Sincere, I did answer you. Oh, you had a second one here. Sincere, you said Putin to undergo cancer surgery and transfer power to ex-FSB chief. I didn't see that anywhere reputable, though. I heard about it yesterday, but I didn't see it popping up in sort of any of the big news sources I follow. If anybody's got anything on that showing it's more reputable, but as I said, none of the big guys I follow mentioned it. So I'm a little skeptical of things like that, unless it pops up into generally speaking, I trust the mainstream media. They get things wrong, but they usually don't miss things that other people get. And what I mean is when some lesser media gets a story, when the big guys don't end up reporting on it too, I become very skeptical. So yeah, Sincere, I'm a little skeptical on it. I think we would have heard more about it at this point. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, guys. And I think I'm going to sneeze. Woo! Excuse me. Oh, Sasha, I'm sorry. I scared my dog who's on the chair next to me. There you go. She's 12 years old. And she still gets scared when I sneeze. The Russia's nationwide mobilization rumor still out there. Thank you. I see some bless yous on there. Appreciate it, guys, on TikTok. Hello, Lithuania. Thanks for joining us. We are Gesundheit. I know we actually, by the way, for the Germans, which is kind of funny, we actually say Gesundheit here in the States. We'll say bless you, but we'll also say, Yid says, thank you. We'll also say Gesundheit. And I don't know how the hell, I mean, we did have a huge German population, at the beginning, but I don't know how the hell Gesundheit became something we say, but it's something we say. It's the funniest thing. Yeah. I remember some German ones, they were like, what do you mean you say Gesundheit? We do. But the rumors are still ongoing about nationwide mobilization for the Russians that Putin may announce it on May 9th. Just more rumors today. Nobody has any proof of it. But the thought is that Putin is getting so desperate, that the troops are doing so badly, that they're not going to have a choice. Oh, interesting. Okay, let me get to that in a second, Humble Potato. That they're not going to have a choice but to basically have a nationwide draft and to try to get, because they're going to need so many more men. And if that happens, I am Greek, yes. And if that happens, it's still going to take a long time for the Russians to get these guys prepared, like the new draftees, and they're still going to be draftees. They're not going to be very good troops. And at that point, we hope that there's enough new weapons and everything that Ukraine's got that they're able to beat Russia before they actually can get the mobilization, ready, which could be 6 months or longer, right? Interesting. So just to show you, but if somebody else wants to Google too. So Humble Potato says CNN reported on Putin's cancer surgery. Very interesting. If somebody, I would appreciate if you guys want to go out there and Google and just see if there's any articles out there. Thank you, Lima, for that. See if you can find any articles on there. And I mean, you don't have to pay, just kind of post them if you want. I'd be curious to see. I mean, either I'll put my glasses on so I can really see what you guys are writing, either on TikTok and or Humble Potato's this name. I know it's funny. Either on TikTok or on YouTube. I'd be appreciated if you can find the article, but again, somebody reputable, CNN, whoever, and just put a little more detail there. I was looking here. I don't want to go too long. Actually, this is a feel-good story, though. Oh, and we already had Lavrov and the Jews. That was one of my stories that's done. So the employees of a Dutch dock have refused to unload a tanker carrying about 60,000 tons of diesel fuel from Russia. Bloomberg is reporting. From what I heard, this was a tanker that already, who was it? Was it the Swedes? The Norwegians? I'm trying to think of who it was, but somebody in the or Denmark, it was somebody in the Scandinavia area who already refused to unload the tanker, and they had to go to Holland instead. And the Dutch said, nope. Or the Netherlands, the Dutch said, nope, we're not doing it either. So very interesting. Anyway, I just had to mention that because I thought it was kind of funny. Humble Potato is saying it was New York Post. New York Post isn't, so it was Norway. Okay, I thought it was one of those guys. Yeah, Norway. God bless Norway for doing that. New York Post is tabloidy, but doesn't necessarily get things wrong. I'd just be curious what their source is, unless they're saying credible sources tell the New York Post this is about Putin's alleged cancer surgery. I'd just be a little careful on that. Just because, yeah, they're not the most credible source, but they're also not the National Enquirer. They're not the worst source. They're not a good source, but they're not the worst source. So I'd be curious, again, New York Post getting breaking international news. Really? Doubtful. There's a massive forest fire going on in Siberia. Actually, I do have a video of that just because I thought it was kind of cool. It's a huge fire. Again, doubtful the Ukrainians had anything to do with it, but it does put things in a really bad stead for the Russians. I mean, you can look at this. That's just all clouds from the fire. It's just in Siberia. It's huge, absolutely huge. And it's just one more thing they've got to worry about now with everything else going on. There's also, thank you, Lima, there's also the question of whether, Russian troops typically would help to deal with forest fires and whether they're even available. So very interesting. What else you got? Not too much more here. Well, actually, the only other story to tell you, and then we'll do questions, is Ukrainian prosecutors and police today named a suspect who they believe committed war crimes in Bucha. What happened previously, remember how they named 10 guys like about a week ago? Thank you for that on TikTok. They named 10 guys a week ago, and the 10 guys were people that they accused of war crimes, but not of murder. So they accused them of torture, for example, of tying people up, threatening to kill them, putting a blindfold on, and then putting a gun next to their head and shooting so the person thought they were being killed. And then, you're alive still, right? So they were able to name and identify 10 Russian soldiers who were involved in torture, which is a war crime, and named them, which is great. And they're going to try to indict them or however one does that. Well, today they announced the name of the first Russian soldier. Thank you for the lights, Mila. I used to say Mila until I had the horrific UN boss, the incompetent and unethical UN boss named Mila, who got very upset when you called her Mila. So now I've got that stupid name Mila in my head every time I see Mila. I'm never going to say Mila again. other than when I'm telling you guys about the worst job experience of my life. But Bucha, so the Ukrainians named a guy today, Sergei Kolosei. I'm going to say Kolosei, Kolosei in English. Thank you for the merry-go-round there. And they say that he, interestingly enough, he's responsible for the first 4 murders that we pretty much saw on television when we saw the media and the troops entering Bucha. Remember, there were a number of people on the ground dead. This is that town west of Kyiv about a month ago, the horrific war crimes. And one guy in particular, do you remember he had his hands tied behind his back and he was on the side of the road and he was executed in the back of the head? That's one of the guys they say this guy killed. And they know the 4 people he killed. This is one of them. What's interesting is they've got they've got the guy's photo because, oh God, I'm pissed if I don't have this here. I probably don't. The idiot, hold on. Oh, I may have this under photos. Hang on. This jerk. That's why I wanted to name his name at least because he's such a jerk. Oh, maybe I don't have it here. I may have deleted them. Anyway, it's on my TikTok. I may have deleted them already. I probably did already delete them. So the photos, they've got it. I've got a TikTok up of this. They've got a photo of this guy. And he's at the local post office in Belarus, right? That country to the north, a little bit west of Ukraine, that's in cahoots with Russia. It's run by a good country, but run by a dictator. So it's good people, but dictator. And the Russian troops go up there when they were leaving Kyiv, because the Russians forced them out of Kyiv, and they were bringing all their looted goods with them. Remember, they were stealing children's toys, and like one guy was in line with 12 car batteries that he stole from Ukrainians. Well, this idiot is there, and there's a big picture of him standing there, and what does he have next to him that he's trying to mail home back to Russia? The trunk. I'm not even sure the word for this. Do you call it the hood of a trunk? In other words, the trunk of a car. I'm thinking do you guys call it a boot in England, whatever it is, the back of the car, but those old ones that are flat, like the front of the car, the trunk, he took it off a car and was trying to send that thing home through the mail. I guess because you can't get these in Russia. The boot. I know we say trunk, but the actual lid, the trunk lid, he stole the trunk lid and he's standing there at the post office with this huge trunk lid that he's going to wrap up and mail home. Pathetic, just to add to the sort of the pathetic nature of who this guy is. Anyway, that just kind of got me going. All right, guys, that is it for my news update today. We will go on till quarter after with questions. Let me know, mods or anybody else, if I missed anybody's super chat question, obviously. Let me jump right in. I will jump in with a first TikTok question. I've already got 94 questions on TikTok. This is why I tell folks, I will do all the questions I can, but if you do the super chat question, I jump to it first as a thank you because there's too many questions anyway. So there's just no way to do all the questions with 94 on TikTok alone. And then, you YouTubers are chattier than you are questiony. But, this is your official Stefan asks, what's the deal with NATO jets being scrambled? I suspect you are asking about Sweden. Thank you, Kianowski. About Sweden, because there's been a lot of that seems to have been happening a lot lately. If it is Sweden, the Russians are trying to freak them out. They're just trying to freak them out. I mean, I mentioned this yesterday. Sorry, my eye. There's an aspect of utility to it. If you're thinking of going to war with somebody, or you want to be prepared to go to war with somebody, you send your jets and invade their airspace, and then you count how many seconds it takes for the country to send fighter jets back to get you, right? To intercept you and to make you leave. Thank you, Lima, for that. And the idea is, I keep pulling this out of my butt, but let's pretend it's 90 seconds. Verena, thank you for that. Let's pretend it's 90 seconds it takes from when the Russians enter Swedish airspace to when the Swedish fighter jet comes up and says, Russian plane, leave our territory, and the Russians leave. That lets you know. It lets the Russians know that they've got if they were really attacking Sweden, they would have 90 seconds from when they entered Swedish airspace to when they would be intercepted. So it tells them they've got 90 seconds to drop their bombs, do whatever they want, and then get out. That's one reason they do it. The other is to be a threat, because in essence, you're telling them, I'm practicing to invade you, in essence. Now, stupid as hell, because with the Swedes, they're doing it to try to scare them, because the Swedes are seriously talking about joining NATO potentially and maybe announcing it in the next 2 weeks. And somehow the Russians think that doing this is going to make the Swedes feel less threatened and less likely like they need to join NATO. I think it's quite the opposite. I think the Swedes will see this and go, holy cow, this is bad. Maybe joining NATO is not such a bad idea because these Russians seem a little crazy and threatening on our border. That's my take. All right, a little more on from the New York Post. Thank you. Thomas DeTank says the New York Post story. So we're getting back to this issue of Putin, and Putin, is he sick? The story about maybe Putin having cancer. And Thomas says the New York Post story says that the extraordinary claims appeared on a popular Telegram channel, General SVR, which, okay, there you go right there, which says its source is a well-placed figure in the Kremlin. Okay, so, their source is a Telegram channel. Telegram is a social media channel. Hard to explain, but okay, it would be like saying it's a TikTok channel or it's a YouTube channel, but it's popular. And this TikTok channel, whichever it is, or this YouTube channel that we have no reason to believe is a credible channel, by the way, it just says it's popular, says they've got a well-placed Kremlin source. Okay. I mean, maybe, but that's like, I don't know. I mean, that just seems that's not enough. That's not enough for me to believe. Maybe true, but it's not enough. First of all, they're not doing enough of their own research because I want to know, just because it's popular, is it a political popular Telegram channel that always seems to get information and get it right? That's interesting. If they're always getting inside information, they're always getting it right, then I'd start to believe them, right? But we don't know anything about that, and the New York Post didn't seem to care. The New York Post was looking for a sexy story. That's what they were doing. So maybe true, but there's not enough there to believe it. So, oh well, we can dream, we can hope. Let's find another one. They are, from what we know, Disney House UK asked if my friend Vlad and his team is doing okay and safe. Yep, they are. I mean, they are. None of him and his team are in Kharkiv, which is good because that's where they're from. And I mean, poor Kharkiv is just it's really scary. Watching the news now, the Russians are trying to destroy it. It's the second largest city, 1.5 million people, and the Russians are just trying. Thank you, Lima, for that. The Russians are just trying to completely destroy the poor place now. But Vlad's good. His friends are good. I worry about all of them as far as just I don't know how you sort of live through wartime and keep your mind going. I think even for us, it's been kind of hard just because I'm so revved up with all of this stuff. I think like all of us, it's almost like a mini COVID to some degree where everything's a little too revved up and nervous and you have a hard time sleeping and everything else. And I can't even imagine if it's your country and your family and your friends. I mean, Vlad's father just got out of there and was able to join them. His father had been stuck back, not just in Kharkiv, but north of Kharkiv in a suburb. Kharkiv is only, I actually looked again, 15 miles from the Russian border, maybe. So dad was probably 5 miles from the Russian border, his dad. And he finally convinced his dad to get out of there. He was like, you're a man. Even though you're beyond military age, you're a guy in your 60s. Get the hell out of there. So finally got him out of there, thank God. But, that stuff has got to, anyway, they're doing fine. But I think stress, and I know actually, I will tell you this too, because it's interesting news, but I was asking Vlad how some of the other refugees were doing, and he said they're having a hard time because one of the problems people are finding is, what do you do when you move across country? You've got to make money at some point and provide for your family. A lot of folks didn't have consulting jobs internationally or whatever. They were working at the local, one of the women, I'm not going to name names because I'm not sure whether we wanted to go there, but one of the women was a teacher. I think she was like in a nursery room or something like that, but for young kids. And she can't get a teaching job where she's going. First of all, because I'm not sure the schools are meeting in these towns, but also like she's new and she's, they've already got their teachers for the year. And it's kind of depressing. You're trying to take care of your kid. You don't have enough money because it's not like any of these guys are rich. So it's not like, I think of Americans, like the average American, the number they always cite is that the average American doesn't have $400 for an emergency bill. So if there was an emergency medical bill costing $400, which can happen in this country very easily, $400 would be cheap, the average American wouldn't have that kind of money available to pay if it was an unexpected bill. And I would imagine the average Ukrainian is the same thing. All of a sudden you lose your job because you moved and it was bombed. How do you pay for your kid? Where do you get food? How do you pay for your lodging, your housing? So anyway, I think that's got to be a real ongoing stressful thing for these guys, which is sad, But anyway, whatever we can do to help. Thomas Tank weighs in again on the Post story, the New York Post story about Putin's health. The Post story also says the person is Nikolai Patrushev, head of the Russian Federal Police's Security Council. That's interesting. Is it, and you don't have to buy a question to answer me, Thomas, but is it is Nikolai Patrushev the I know Russia's weighing in and going, stop reading the post. But is Nikolai Patrushev the guy who runs the Telegram channel? Because that's pretty wild. There's no way the head of the Russian Federal Police and Security Council, if the Russian Federal Police guy was letting it be known that Putin had cancer and was going to the hospital, it would be the last scoop he would give anybody, because he'd be probably dead. That would be my guess if he did that. Yeah, weird across the board. But again, wait until it gets to a more credible source, and then maybe. But it's interesting. I mean, I'd keep an eye on it, but it's interesting. The 2 patrol boats, we did. I even showed video of the 2 patrol boats, but maybe you asked about it before I showed the video. Yeah, getting shot. That was great. May 9th, so just to remind folks why we keep hearing about May 9th. May 9th is the anniversary. It's the day the Russians salivate. Pretty much true. The day the Russians celebrate their victory over the Nazis in World War II. And it is a very important date, to the point of being a fetish, I would argue, among the Russians, where they just can't get over it. And I mean, I get it, but to some degree, it's been 70 years or 80 years now, practically. Whatever. I mean, it was a big deal. I get it was a big deal, but come on already. So the Russians, it is part of how they hang on to power, is constantly reminding people of the Nazis and how they beat the Nazis. And this is why, by the way, they're claiming the Ukrainians are Nazis, because that's the whole idea, right? It's very, very sort of interesting. In any case, no, Thomas is a good guy. Don't worry. Thomas weighs in a lot on stuff. He's just kind of trying to give, I think, obviously he probably didn't mean to send 3 in a row. Don't worry, guys, on YouTube. Thomas is a regular. Don't worry. And I am intrigued by the story. If there was anything, he didn't mean to send it 3 times, guy. Be nice. You know how things work here. I've done that too. There's a little glitch and you enter something 3 times. You click send because it hasn't sent, and then you get 3 sent. Don't worry. Relax. So Raggedy Man Rusty asks on TikTok, on YouTube, what would it take to remove Russia from the UN? Either a majority or a supermajority vote. I'm going to guess 2/3 vote. I was reading something the other day that my friend sent me that was talking about, for example, how they removed, thank you, Lima, for that, how they removed Taiwan from the UN. Remember that whole thing with China? And it was by a vote. And my guess is it either was a majority, or my guess was it was a 2/3 vote or something, 3/4 or 2/3 vote is my guess. So it would be the same. In principle, it would be the same thing, which is unfortunate. I mean, I don't know that Russia should be removed from the UN, but because I can see, I know, where's Marion? I was referring to Marion. Marion does work during the day. It's the middle of the day in, where she lives. So she may not be able to join us. Actually, she doesn't. Marion usually, she even told me she watches this later at night. So at least now Marion knows she's been pinged by the audience for her wisdom. She'll text me at midnight. But I don't know that it's necessarily necessary for, thank you, Linda, for that, to remove Russia from the UN entirely. I can see the argument, even though I think the UN is pretty worthless. I can see the argument for, it's the only place where every country can get together, and even when they're at war, and even, for example, thank you for that on TikTok, guys. Even something like, the U.S., when we had no relations with Iran, we still let Iran come into the U.S. to go to the UN. It was this place where Libya could still go. It was this place where everybody can go, even if we hate each other. So I don't necessarily think I want to throw Russia out, but I do think we should consider throwing Russia out of the UN Security Council. Oops, dropping my glasses. Sorry, Kukla. Dropping my glasses on Mom's dog. I do think we should consider kicking him out of the UN Security Council. And one thing we talked about the other day with my friend Marion is, there's an interesting argument to be made that Russia is not legitimately a member of the UN Security Council. Russia was able to inherit the Soviet Union's seat on the Security Council. Why? Russia isn't I forget the word. It's not successor. It's there's another continuing, I think it was the continuing country, some word like that, basically meaning that you're the country that took the old country's place. Russia did not take the Soviet Union's place. 15 countries took the Soviet Union's place. The Soviet Union was made up of Russia and 14 other countries. Russia wasn't the only country. I mean, they like to pretend like it was like World War II. Russia likes to pretend it was them. It was the Soviet Union. It wasn't just Russia, right? So you get a situation where with this, when the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, the seat on the Security Council either should have gone away because the Soviet Union went away, or if we thought, well, it was the Soviet seat for some crazy reason we should keep it, then it should have gone to the follow-on states. Thank you, Lima, for that. It should have gone on to the follow-on states that were the Soviet Union. And it means you share it between Russia, Georgia, Ukraine, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Azerbaijan. I'm not going to go through all of them. Moldova, the three Baltics, right? You should have gone through everybody. And maybe once a month, that chair of the Soviets gets changed on the Security Council, the same way that other countries filter in, but that's a seat reserved for the 15 countries of the former Soviet Union. Why not? And Mary and I were looking into this, and there's a really interesting argument to be made that basically the UN screwed up. That I think we were trying to be nice to Russia. Russia still had nukes, and there's that whole Russia has nukes thing. So everyone kind of agreed and said, oh, okay, let's just let Russia have the Soviet seat because we've got to be nice to Russia, and look what being nice to Russia gets us. But anyway, very annoying to me. That really, as a lawyer, I think it is legally suspect what they did, because you can't get together, especially because countries like Ukraine and others didn't agree to this. I mean, Ukraine has just as much of a right to that seat as Russia does. Anyway, pisses me off. And of course, now Russia's screwing it up. But that's where I would sort of go after things if it were me, sort of in charge of this stuff. Russia isn't the successor, but they're not. They're not. They're just not. There's 15 successors, not just Russia. They're not the only one. Yulia. Hi, Yulia. Good to see you again. Yulia Anna asks, do you think Ukraine will ever get Donbass and Crimea? So Donbass is that region in the east that the Russians have been trying to foment civil war in for the last 8 years. They are now in there and they're trying to annex it, right? So that's the big fight in the east. And Crimea, which is the peninsula in southern Ukraine that the Russians invaded and stole in 2014, right? So you look at the map of Ukraine, you'll see this peninsula sticking into the water there. So Julia's asking, do you think Ukraine will ever get them back? Eventually, I think Donbass, at least for right now, Donbass might be easier, only because that's where sort of the fighting is. And from what we're hearing, most of the generals and everybody think that Russia could very soon in the next week or two be in trouble there, especially with Ukraine getting more and more of the Western weapons. Actually, I was reading today, by the way, think about this I was reading today artillery, for example. And one sec, just water today. Too late in the day for coffee, or I'll be crazy all night. But the artillery the U.S. and Europe are sending to Ukraine can shoot farther than the Russian artillery. So Russia has been going nuts, shooting this artillery at the Ukrainians. Well, look at it this way: if this is Russian and Ukrainian. Here's Russia shooting. I'll do it from my ear. Well, not my ear, but from Russia shooting Ukraine, and it can shoot this far. Well, normally Ukraine would have to get this close to hit Russia, and they're both within distance of each other. They can hit each other. It's very risky, or even worse. Well, with the new weapons, Ukraine can be here and hit Russia, but Russia can only hit right here. So imagine it being an inch short. Because Ukraine's artillery goes so far, it can hit Russia, even though Ukraine is out of range of Russia. So when that equipment gets there and when that equipment starts being used, it's going to be a game changer for Ukraine. Now, when that happens, it could take a month. Who knows, right? But very interesting. Timothy Lacroix, question will be below. Okay. I will look for it. Excuse me. In any case, so that's I think. But I do think Eastern Ukraine will be maybe an easier fight, but maybe not. They've been having problems for 8 years with all of the East, right? Part of it is occupied by the Russian-backed separatists, or not even calling them separatists is BS. The Russians, in essence. I don't know. People are definitely not talking about Crimea coming back anytime soon. But if the Russians really get routed, who knows? And with all the weapons and all the support the West is giving, who knows? It'd be great to see if basically the Russian forces get routed, Putin gets overthrown, and all of a sudden the Russians are just in disarray, and the Ukrainians say, "That's it, we're taking back our country." I'd love to see it. All right. Well, while I'm waiting for Timothy to throw another question up there. Oh, no, sorry. Here we go. Joseph Alfaro. Why are a lot of people freaking out about May 9th? I don't know why they're freaking out, but I mean, I guess I was starting to explain this a little bit. So May 9th is the anniversary of when the Russians celebrate the victory over the Nazis in World War II. Every year they have their big scary parade of all their weapons, all that goofy stuff, their nuclear weapons and everything on the streets. And Putin gives a big speech. This year, the thought is, because the war is going on, Putin has wanted a big victory to announce on this day, because it's their big victory over the Nazis day. So get it? We're going to have victory over the Nazis in Ukraine, right? This whole thing. And the concern is that Putin put Putin put so much pressure on the troops, on his Russian troops in Ukraine, that they ended up fighting early. Like, they should have rested a few more weeks before they started the war in the East. They didn't. So they're under pressure to win. They're not winning. And this means, could Putin use nuclear weapons? Could he use chemical weapons? Could he use biological weapons to try to win, because they're under so much pressure for this May 9th deadline, right? That was one of the first concerns. The other concern, so to speak, is that Putin could declare war on May 9th, because now it's a special military operation. But if he declares war, they'd have a nationwide draft. Now, I don't know whether that's concern, because, as I said before, a lot of folks think drafting people nationwide is going to piss off a lot of Russians. They're not going to be happy. The boys that are coming in are not going to be well trained. So they're not going to be, sorry, my allergies are itching me now. The boys are not going to be well trained. So you're going to get a lot more men, but a lot more men who don't know how to fight. And guess what? The Russians are still out of supplies. The Ukrainians have still blown up not all their tanks, but a lot of their tanks and a lot of their supplies, that it's not clear that Russia can even build more because of the sanctions. So will this nationwide draft really help them? I don't think people are freaking out about the nationwide draft, but I think they're freaking out that, will Putin feel the need to drop a bomb of some kind, literally, so that he can, win something by May 9th that he can claim credit for. I think that's what people are talking about. Javi. Have a sip of water. Sub-Saharan Africa. Oh, the food stuff. Yeah, hang on. Thoughts on reports that Sub-Saharan Africa may face food shortages due to the Ukrainian war, with Ukraine being one of the main providers of food. Yep. Could we see these countries take the stance on the war, even with their close trade relations with Russia and China? I mean, there's been a lot of increased talk from the UN, very concerned about worldwide food shortages. I mean, food shortages in Ukraine to start with, but worldwide food shortages because, as I was saying, the Russians have, thanks for that, Dawn, or somebody, maybe it was Dawn. I thought it was Dawn. I'm not sure who gave me the hat. The Russians have been blowing up agricultural facilities in Ukraine, right? I mean, they've just been blowing things up. Thank you, Rue. They've been stealing the farm equipment. They've been stealing the grain itself. There were a video of a big caravan bringing a bunch of the grain down to Crimea, and I think some of it east as well towards Russia. And the problem is that not only the Ukrainians won't have food, but that Ukraine exports so much grain around the world, particularly to Africa, that some of these countries are going to have a food crisis because one of the major suppliers of food the food may go bad. They may not be able to plant as much food. They certainly can't get the food out of the country. Oh, and the Russian blockade in the sea. The Russian blockade in the Black Sea, right, where they sunk the ship, the Moskva, the Russians still have shipped theirs, and they're stopping Ukrainian ships from leaving that would normally be carrying grain to the rest of the world. So there is a real and legitimate concern as to whether Russia is going to cause a food crisis. As far as the stance of the African countries or other countries, I guess they could go both ways. They could get angry at Russia for doing this, or they could take Russia's side and try to say, okay, Russia, we'll publicly take your side as long as you give us food, or let us get some of the food or something. So who knows? Who knows which way it could twist them either way. I think that the UN should have gotten its ships there. The Pope should have said, I'm getting some ships. I'm putting them under the flag of the Holy See, the Vatican, and we're filling them up with grain. And if you want to, and I'm going to be on it. And if you want to blow up the ship with the Pope on it, you go ahead. But you just see what happens next if you do that, And that's what I would have done if I was the Pope personally. But I'm not the Pope. But no, I think this is one of those things where the Russians are bluffing again. If you have the right people, even NATO could have done it. Even NATO could have said, we're going to be patrolling, and bringing food in and out. And if you want to shoot us and start World War III, go for it. But you're already losing to Ukraine. If you want to lose to us too, okie dokie. Oops, sorry. MT History Buff was weighing in. I always like MT. There's about a 90-day buffer on the world food supply chain, and we will soon hit that. So the end of May, we'll see the worst of the food crisis begin. That's interesting. I mean, Thomas, I know you're saying they're the 8th largest exporter of wheat, but they're quite big from what I saw. I mean, they've got a sizable amount, and maybe it's for certain countries, but I know it's considered not good. The UN's been saying, whether it's the World Food Program or whoever it is, that they're really worried about it. Okay, whose question did I miss? Be kind. Okay, I see the question. Be kind. You didn't tell me who it was. But if you want to tell me who it was that asked the question. Timothy. Oh, that's your question, Timothy. I got you. Okay. Yeah, I saw that, Timothy Lacroix. I saw that you were going to put a question, but then I never saw your question. Are there military actions that Ukraine is not doing in country so they don't escalate the situation? Oh, I see what you mean. Such as blowing up the Kerch Bridge, i.e. what more could Ukraine do with the gloves off? Huh. I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, because Russia keeps claiming it's not escalating too. And I mean, give me a break. They're trying not to escalate. I haven't seen people discussing that. I mean, I forgot one of the I think it was Leighton, Colonel Leighton on TV today was saying he'd like to see the Ukrainians hitting inside Russia more. He really said, he goes, I'd like to see them hitting more of the cities, outside, right outside their borders, hitting more of the supplies, but basically take the battle to Russia. I think because he said you've got to go after their supplies because these are the supply lines to feed the Russian army, feed them food literally, but also feed them ammunition and fuel for their tanks and everything else. But it also freaks out the Russians. You take the war to them and it starts to kind of freak them out. Why that's not happening though, is that because the Ukrainians are afraid of pissing off the Russians and escalating? Thank you for that, John. Or do they have a strategic reason that they don't have if they're using missiles or they're using helicopters, they've only got so many and they're being careful because they don't want to sort of do it all at once. And then, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. I don't know. But I don't know. I have not heard people say that the Ukrainians are pulling punches out of fear of angering Russia. Again, what we're seeing is that the Ukrainians maybe are worried about their equipment and worried about how much they have and worried that if they go in and I don't know if it's missiles or artillery or whatever, but if they use too much of it, will they have enough in 2 weeks or in a month from now? Now, the question there becomes, with NATO and the West and others supplying all these new weapons, Ukraine is in a much less worrisome situation where they've got to worry about their stocks of ammunition and things because they know they're getting more. I mean, they still have to worry about it, but they know that at this point, it looks like the West wants to really get them enough, So anyway, I don't know, but I'd not heard anything that was talking about the Ukrainians pulling punches because they were afraid of ticking off the Russians. That sounds like it was more of a Western thing, right? That we didn't want them to, but now that looks like it's changed. Just looking here, just looking here at what MT History is writing. I'm just going to pull this up and see what it is. We are not seeing a parity in Russian soil attacks as Ukraine is solely hitting military and strategic targets and Russia's hitting everything. Oh, sure. But Ukraine can't go after civilian targets in Russia. I mean, meaning they can't go after residential buildings and things like that. It's a war crime. They just can't. They're the good guys. They can't do that. That would call into question us giving them weapons. I mean, meaning we would have a problem giving them weapons if they were intentionally blowing up civilians. So, yeah, I don't see that. I see. So Thomas is saying Russia and Ukraine together account for nearly 30% of the global wheat trade. Okay, maybe that's the figure I saw because I saw one. Thank you for the duck on TikTok. I saw some figure that was combining the two of them. It must have been wheat then. Yeah. Just looking. Was there anything else here? Okay. Let me pull up another TikTok question from you guys. Let me just scroll down here. All the fires in Russia. The thing is, I mean, the fires out west in Russia are probably just fires, but it's hard to know. And This is one reason why I was talking earlier about why Ukraine is being so cagey about whether they're responsible for all of these attacks, is because they want Russians to think they're responsible for every attack. They want every time there's a fire, every time something goes wrong at a chemical plant or a military plant or something, and there's a fire or an explosion, they want the Russians to immediately think, "Oh my God, it's the Ukrainians," because they want to scare the hell out of them. They want the Russians to think the Ukrainians are 10 feet tall and scary as hell. So I doubt a lot of these fires and things are from Ukraine. I think the nearby things we're seeing when we see things blow up in Belgorod, anything goes wrong in Belgorod, it's the Ukrainians. There's a couple other cities, I'm forgetting the names, that are near Ukraine that also things have been blowing up. That's the Ukrainians. Railway bridges for trains to go over, passages. That's the Ukrainians, right? Blowing up trains so that the reinforcements can't come in for the troops. But I doubt the fires are the Ukrainians, but again, the reason they're not saying so is so they can hopefully freak the Russians out, which is not a terrible idea. What else we got here? Putin could be doing this as a legacy war. Yeah, I think so. He's getting older. I think he probably is. But he's doing it with an intent, though. Putin, I think, thinks that he's going to reconstitute the Soviet Union, and he's going to be the great leader who brought Ukraine back into the Soviet grasp. And this time, they're not even an independent, country or well, I guess you'd call it a Soviet back then, right? But they are literally going to be dissolved and become part of Russia. So he literally brought Ukraine back into the fold from his perspective, and he thinks he's going to be famous. When will the war end? I mean, it could be in a month, it could be in 5 years. Right? I mean, I don't know. Let's see how the next 2 to 4 weeks go in terms of how badly Russia's doing. Interesting. CNN's talking to a captain in the steel plant. I did not see anything about evacuating Latvia. I don't think Russia will declare war. No, Russia will not declare war on NATO. There's no way, because they'd lose. I mean, think about this, Christy. Christy's asking a question on TikTok. You don't think Russia will declare war on NATO May 5th? Russia's having a hard time beating Ukraine. And, I love Ukraine. Thank you for the thing there. But I bet you NATO is more powerful than Ukraine, even though, I wouldn't want to test it. Clearly, Ukraine knows what they're doing. But my God, they're going to take on the French and the Germans and the Brits and the Americans? Really? I mean, really? They're out of their minds. They're out of their minds. I mean, Russia can't declare. Russia will lose if they declare war on Ukraine, on NATO. Because then not only do they have those 5 or 6 fronts in Ukraine to worry about, they're going to have to worry about 30 countries. I mean, how many countries are we in NATO now? All NATO countries now attacking Russia. And mind you, it's still little old Russia. They've got the same military they've got now, and they're running out of men already, right? And if they're running out of, thank you, Kanowski, for that. If they're running out of men already, imagine their manpower needs they're going to have if they take on 30 NATO countries. So yeah, no. I don't see it. He's going to keep I think he's been threatening it to scare people, but what else we got here? Yeah, the Latvia thing, I just don't know. I did not hear that. Do you think they should lose the veto vote? We talked about that earlier. Let me see. What would... Russia does have submarines in the Black Sea. Yes, Kind Now is asking on TikTok. They've got several submarines. We know because, for example, they shot several missiles at Odessa the other day, and they were trying to show off. So they did video of the submarine shooting the missiles off, and it was kind of like, okay. And a lot of people actually thought that it was a mistake, that Russia was basically showing that they didn't have other missiles, that the only missiles they had were on their nuclear submarines because they ran out of other missiles. So it was interesting because it was meant to be cool, but it ended up making people question whether the Russians even knew, whether it was signs that the Russians were running out of weapons, which is very interesting. Yeah, no. Yeah, 420 friendly. Don't even know what you're talking about. I'm not going to post. That's just, I think, I was going to say, I think you're a little high 420 friendly. So, somebody saying he was going to announce a war on all Nazis. There were rumors about that. Sorry, I was going to put that up from Amber. Amber Mullen asks, wasn't there something where Putin was saying he was going to announce a war on all Nazis on May 9th, meaning most of NATO? That was something that people were surmising. It wasn't something that Putin said he was going to do, but people were sort of guessing and saying, that they think Putin is going to do that, right? That was the thought. So I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about it. First of all, he's crazy. I mean, he's not crazy. That's what I mean. He's annoying. He's not crazy. So he's saying this kind of stuff to scare people. The Russians cannot afford to declare war on NATO or they lose. They're already losing to the Ukrainians, and the generals know that. And maybe that's when the generals finally step in. The generals are going, we have a hard time winning in Ukraine, and you're going to declare war on the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, and everybody else there. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. So no, I would not be worried about that at all. So I'm trying to scroll down so I can get other questions from you guys. But yeah, the war could go on for years, but I think in years it would be more of a guerrilla war or something, meaning, the Russians refuse to let go of some land. And then, for example, what if the Russians get kicked back in the east and Ukraine isn't able to kick them out of Crimea? Then you could potentially have a guerrilla war in Crimea where Ukraine just keeps fighting and fighting and fighting to slowly push the Russians out of there, sneaking weapons in, and we would just continue to support them. We would absolutely continue to support them, I think. The 6 oligarchs getting murdered is pretty interesting. EMSJ asks, any facts on the 6 oligarchs murdered since February? So oligarchs are the rich Russian businessmen billionaires who got rich off basically off the Russian people. The Russian leaders let them buy the state industries for cheap. And I mean, just basically bad all around. There are thoughts that Putin and others or Putin's filtering his money through them, to hide it, laundering his money. I mean, in any case, very bad people, but the 6 of them have been murdered since February, which is very suspicious. A couple of them from the same company, which is also weird too, or retired from the same company. Stuff where, the one in Spain, the guy's wife and child was shot and then he was hanged. And it was kind of like, really? Really? It was a little weird. It was meant to look like he killed them. And it was like, really? I would, 6 of them seems like kind of a lot. I will say, you did have some of the oligarchs speak out. And my guess is Putin would want to teach them a lesson not to speak out. And the way you do that is by killing some of their friends and making it very obvious. And maybe, thank you for the corgi, maybe one of the ways you do that is not killing 1 oligarch or even 2, which could be a coincidence, but you kill 6 because nobody's going to think 6 oligarchs dying is a coincidence. They're going to say, oh my God, Putin had them killed. And then every other oligarch goes, okay, we're not saying anything now. So those are my thoughts on the oligarchs being killed, is that, we may be very likely seeing Putin sending a message to all the other oligarchs to STFU, as we say. We're going to go a few minutes longer here. What else we got here? I don't know that we're not. Should America send tanks? Possibly. I don't think we're sending tanks yet. I know we've been sending the Soviet tanks. I guess part of the question becomes, well, there's a couple questions. One, can the Ukrainians operate American tanks, right? I mean, I just don't know whether they've got the know-how to do, meaning they'd have to be trained to use American tanks. They also would have to be trained and given the equipment to keep the American tanks in working order, right? They would need spare parts and all of that. They'd need the mechanics and the engineers, the facilities. And I don't know to what degree American tanks are proprietary, meaning we really, really, really don't want the Russians getting their hands on newer American tanks, right? My guess is that's probably part of it too. We wouldn't want the tank to get lost and the Russians get the stuff. But more importantly, it's probably easier. Well, I don't know though. I mean, it's easier for the Ukrainians to use. They're getting the T-72s because they know how to use it. It's part of the Soviet arsenal. But there's an argument to be made that those things are, I don't even know if it's 50 years old, whatever it is, that it wouldn't be a bad idea to, give them something newer. But I don't know. I don't know the security issues involved. Like I said, as far as whether we don't want the Russians to get their hands on an American tank or the technology, because somehow it would open things up way more to them learning way more than we want them to learn about our technology. It's possible. And again, it seems like there's more than enough tanks, to go around if we would just let the Europeans send them to them. So we'll see. What else we got? We'll do a couple more, guys. I keep going back to the same question, even though there's like 100 questions on TikTok. I keep going back to the same questions. And again, folks, feel free to enter more on YouTube. You guys always crack me up because you're always talking amongst yourselves. The German Chancellor's speech, that was kind of interesting. So the German Chancellor, Scholz, I keep wanting to call him Orloff, Scholz does a speech today, and all I saw was some quotes about it where he was responding to the letter from the German pacifists. Oops, sorry, Sash. Sorry, you. What's going on? He was responding to the letter that like 100 German pacifists or something wrote, saying that, you know, they didn't want him providing weapons to Ukraine. And he gave a wonderful quote back. And I mean, if somebody can find it and put it in the comments on YouTube and on TikTok, but he gave a quote back and basically said, you know, I understand where the pacifists are coming from, but I think it's, and I forgot the word he used, but, you know, little solace or little help to the Ukrainians trying to defend their homeland without weapons. And it was a really good, I assume that's what you're referring to. I didn't see the rest of the speech, but it was the hell of a good response, and actually really important because there's been this concern about the Germans kind of not even waffling. There's this back and forth a little bit. They're really good and then they pull back, and they're really good and then they pull back with the Ukraine stuff. And it looks like Germany has entered really good territory again, which is great. And that Scholz himself has entered really good territory again, which is great. So hopefully that continues. But it was good. It was that's the only part of the speech I saw, but that was a plus. Joseph Alfaro, Joseph, do you believe Lavrov when he said May 9th isn't significant when it comes to the war? That was funny. Yeah. So we were all talking about May 9th and why it's so important. And that's the day that the Russians are celebrating the victory over the Nazis, and Putin wanted big victories to announce that day to the Russian people. And Lavrov, his foreign minister, then says yesterday, the day before, oh, May 9th isn't that important. We're under no rush to get military victories done in Ukraine. He said something like, they'll happen when they happen. And it was like, what? I don't believe him at all. No, I mean, clearly Putin, he's lowering expectations is what he's doing, because it looks like they're not going to have big military victories by May 9th. So they clearly don't yet. And Lavrov is trying to fix things publicly now and go, basically, what do you mean? No, we're not done yet. It's early. Go play with Kukla. Oh, she is trying to get, okay. My dog's trying to get mom's dog to play. And when mom's dog isn't playing, she then wants to play. You want to throw your ball again? Okay, there. Whoop. Except that I can't throw it back and forth with you here. We're at the part of the show where my dog wants to play. Although I will say, we're about a minute or two from calling it quits and just hanging out. So that's probably why she thinks we are going to be playing. She's got a good sense of time. Yeah, Lavrov is trying to play the old lower. Oh, I don't know why all you crazy people around the world thought that we had to have a big victory by May 9th. We don't need a big victory by May 9th, so that when May 9th comes, the world doesn't go, oh my God, look at Putin. He's showing off his weapons and he didn't get a victory. So I think that's clearly what Lavrov's doing. And, maybe that stuff works in Russia because it's all propaganda, but the rest of us are just kind of laughing and going, okay, whatever, whatever. All right. I will do one more question so my dog doesn't get, well, here, come here. Well, don't take it away. I was going to pick up the ball. Thank you for the corgi, since we're talking dogs. I was going to pick up the ball's dog and throw it while I was checking for a question. So what does she do to be tricky? She picks it up and then pulls it away. Okay, well, give it to me. I can't reach over there. She's taking it. She's going 3 feet backwards. All right, Sasha, let me answer another question. And during the hangout period, I can play ball with you, with everybody on TikTok and YouTube. Good question, Caroline. So Caroline asks, why? Oh, and thank you, Christy, for that. Caroline asks, why would a country not want to join NATO? The only thing I can think of is, not the only thing, but, if your country prides itself on independence, like Sweden and Finland does, you've always had almost a cultural inertia that joining one of the blocks, the Eastern Bloc, the Western Bloc, whatever, NATO somehow diminishes you. It diminishes the independent spirit of your nation, right? That's all I can think of, because also for the rest of us in NATO, it's normal to be a member of NATO. We ever since I was born, we were members of NATO. So it's just normal for me. But I think it's the opposite for them. If you're not a member, it's a big sea change in terms of the way you perceive your country. First of all, because you're agreeing to go to war based on 30 other countries getting attacked, right? If any of them get attacked, we're at war. I mean, that's a big commitment if it's not something you're already committed to. So I can see why it's considered a big change. Having said that, for Finland and Sweden, it seems kind of a no-brainer. They would naturally fit in. We've also seen with NATO, it's not like we get into wars every day where we're all attacked and we have to invoke Article 5, which means we all go to war. It's only happened once, after 9/11. And that was, unique anyway. It wasn't like we all had to go to war against Germany not Germany. Germany's in NATO, but you know what I mean, that we had to go to war against Morocco or something. And if anything, that lends credence to the notion that NATO has helped deter wars, because the very existence of the pact is why we haven't had to go to war, because nobody would attack us. So anyway, I don't know why. I mean, I will say the last little news I saw on that, which I didn't get into just because it wasn't very earth-shattering, but there were more stories today, once again, saying Finland just looks like a sure deal. Finland's joining NATO. Sweden keeps leaning that way. One thing I did see, which I was glad to see, two things going on. One, I saw a Swedish paper today, once again, talk about how sort of hey, what are you doing? Sort of their news that they were sure Finland was going to join, which I thought was interesting. And I think all these stories about it being sure Finland is going to join are meant to pressure Sweden, is what I think. They're meant to pressure the debate in Sweden and influence it. Because if the Swedes see that the Finns are joining, then the Swedes really feel left alone. I think Sweden at least felt, okay, they had Finland there, and maybe there was an understanding between Finland and Sweden that they might help each other. Who knows? If there were trouble, well, if Finland joins NATO, Sweden literally is on its own. They're the only one up there that's on its own, and who knows what happens, right? So my guess is, since Sweden is currently debating whether to join NATO, I think NATO, but I also think Finland wanted it to be clear to Sweden that you all need to know they're joining us. And do you really want to be left alone? And so anyway, that's what I think is going on. I think it puts more pressure on them. Anyway, I just thought I'd get into that as that. So, all right, no more questions. All right, guys, as always, we'll hang out for 8 or 10 minutes and just talk about other stuff. You want to come up, Sash? No? All right. Doesn't want to come up. All right. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm a little tired today. I'm always tired, I think. I don't sleep well. I try to sleep well. I have fitful of sleep, I think you're calling, where basically I wake up a lot. So even if I get 9 hours of sleep, I'm not. I ended up having to buy Sasha because I was looking for a dog, but I have dog allergies, and I couldn't just get a dog. I basically went to the pound. I went to Humane Society, places where you go where dogs are abandoned, and not a single one of them could tell me what the breeds of the dogs were. So I ended up having to go buy her because I had to know that she was a breed that generally doesn't involve allergies. And even that was a little bit of a risk because it's never, I don't know. I don't use a CPAP. Nope. Even that was a bit of a risk because you don't know. But anyway, thank God I'm not allergic to her. I thought the eggplant turned out well. Mom thought the eggplant was a little, Christy, okay. Go take care of yourself, Christy. Mom thought the eggplant was a little dry, but I thought it was delicious. So I had it for a snack today. Franny, exactly. Always happy to answer a super chat question. And Debbie, thank you for that. What are your thoughts on Russia saying they will nuke the UK? Oh, that's okay. No, now I don't remember if there's anything new on that or whether that, I know Russia had said like a week ago. Good question on the sleep apnea. Who knows? Russia had said a week ago that they were talking about nuking the UK and all of that. And there was all this weird talk on their TV shows too, where they were like, oh, we will nuke the island, England, because nobody cares about them. And they even threw out this crazy thing about, oh, America would love to see it happen because America doesn't like England. It was this whole crazy. It's like, actually, America's closest ally is England, but who's counting? And Americans actually feel a great affinity for the English, probably because of the shared language, but also because we were a colony, even though we don't think of ourselves as a former colony. There's that connection there. So it was just lunacy, but they were talking about nuking England. And well, the final point I'll say about that is I had read that the United Kingdom has, I read that I think all of your nuclear weapons, if not all, it's most of them, are in submarines. And because they're in submarines, the Russians can't find them. And this is the whole idea of having nuclear weapons in submarines is they're next to impossible to find. They're underwater and they fire underwater. And basically the Russians could destroy the world. They could destroy the entire United Kingdom. They could destroy all of America, and our nuclear weapons in the subs will still survive and they will still take off and destroy Russia. Not a happy scenario, but it is a scenario that guarantees pretty much that Russia will never attack us with nuclear weapons because they know they would be destroyed. So all of their stuff threatening the UK is laughable. And the UK, I mean, the leaders know it. They're trying to scare the people. I think they're trying to rev up their own people. You know, like, hey, look at us. Our government's threatening to nuke England. Yay. You know, that kind of crazy stuff. And they're trying to scare probably the British people or someone in Europe. They're trying to reach some of the pacifists, like the people who wrote the letter in Germany. They're trying to hit the pacifists somewhere and say, hey, you pacifists, you've been a little quiet. We want you to scream a little bit more about how this is crazy. The war has to stop, right? Which also, as Cedric Layton was saying earlier, gives Russia a chance. If you can stop the war for a while, then you give Russia a chance to regroup and to send in reinforcements that then they can use to beat the Ukrainians totally. Debbie, thank you for that. Oh, anyway. So what else? Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think we're just going to have pasta. We have the wonderful little tortellini from Costco and just some tomato sauce, which I don't love tomato sauce on tortellini, but it's okay. I like cream sauce, but my mom, it gets a little heavy for her. So I tend not to make cream sauce with tortellini, but I do love cream sauce. And I have a very good Parmesan, Parmigiano Grana that I bought because the Reggiano was too expensive and the Grana was still rather expensive. I buy a Reggiano back in DC when it's on sale for like $10 a pound. And then I just like stock up and put it in the freezer. And it actually works frozen. Like it because the freezer kind of makes it crumble. That's what you want anyway. So it ends up working quite well. Shrimp scampi, that sounds good. My YouTube channel is my name. Oh, no, Sasha's looking. Yeah, Sasha's getting jealous because the other dog's going out. My YouTube channel is my name, John Aravosis, DC, as in District of Columbia. So I do not practice law. I have a law degree, and I actually got I passed my bar exam in Illinois because I was feeling guilty not having passed the bar. But I've never practiced. Now, I worked for some law firms when I was in school, but I didn't enjoy it. So I've never practiced, and I went into politics and then lots of other things. So there. Yeah, we talked about it earlier about Putin going for surgery. You know, it was in the New York Post, but we're not convinced we believe the New York Post. So, you know, we'll see. But we're not totally convinced of it. But yeah, so dinner tonight's going to be the Costco tortellini, which I do like. But I'm thinking I probably don't even have enough Parmesan left because I used most of it for the eggplant to make a cream sauce. But as I said, we'll see. Mom can't really eat the cream sauce too much because she gets sick. So now my dog is trying to get mom's dog to play. We'll see what happens. She's going to bark in a second because that's the next layer of trying to get her to play. Anyway, what else, guys? What else? I don't know. I've not been to Ukraine. I'm dying to go to Ukraine. Oh my God, I'm dying to go to Ukraine. But now does not seem opportune. But I would love to go to Ukraine. I mean, I've always wanted to. I mean, it'll be fascinating anyway. Now I'm very fascinated by the country, And I studied. What you doing, Sash? I studied Russian for a year, so I do have some Russian. And the Ukrainians speak Russian, a lot of them. No, I know. Just wait. All right, where's it? Let me get it. All right. Sorry, my dog. We're doing the. Yeah. Oh, go. And you can use it. And I was starting to study a little Ukrainian, but honestly, it's a little hard because what I'm finding is there's too many differences with Russian. Sorry, I'm like bending down to get my dog's ball. Ready, go. There's too many differences with Russian, and it's confusing me. So I'm considering I will try to get Sasha, although right now we're in the running phase. But I'm finding it very confusing trying to learn the Ukrainian because too many words are different. I thought it was very close. Too many words of difference. So, in any case, I started up my Duolingo again, and I started with Russian because I know I live in DC normally. I know a hell of a lot more. Well, I studied a year of Russian. I do know a lot of vocabulary. I don't know jack with Ukrainian. And every word, even the word thank you, I was like, yakuyu? I was like, what? I know spasiba. like all the basic words I know, and not all of them, but I mean, I know a lot of the basic words in Russian and Ukrainian. I'm starting from. Anyway, there was a very long story short of saying I would love to go to Ukraine, and I finally committed myself to maybe I will just brush up on my Russian, and when I go to Ukraine, I'll just say "Извините, я говорю по-русски," and I'm sorry, I speak Russian, and I'm sure they'd be like, "It's okay. I'm American. No, yeah, American or Amerikanец. I would say Amerikansky, Amerikanец, but I'd say I'm American and I speak Russian. I'm sorry, but a lot of them speak English too. But my guess is, no one's going to object to a foreigner speaking Russian to them, and a lot of them still do. I mean, my friend Vlad's family, he was brought up speaking Russian until he was age 10, he said, and then at age 10, he's from Kharkiv, right? So that the second largest city in the Northeast. At age 10. He started to learn. He had to learn Ukrainian because it was going to be on his high school exams or whatever were in Ukrainian, and he was forced to learn Ukrainian. He never had learned it until age 10, which also means his family just spoke Russian, and they're proud Ukrainians. They just speak Russian. I mean, it's kind of it's an interesting. Well, I guess it's not that different. Oh my God, what are you barking at now? Jesus! Now mom's dog's gonna bark at me. Oh, because he took her out and she didn't go. He shouldn't have left her in here. My nephew took the dog out. She didn't do her stuff, so he tied her up in the room with me. One moment. Although I'm going to sign off with you guys in a minute anyway. But you know what? It's 6:30. I'm just going to sign off anyway because she's going to bark. But we were going to sign off at this hour anyway. So, all right, guys, I am going to run and get dinner. This is mom's dog, Kukla, giving the signal that it's time to go. Oh no! I tried to pick up my dog was on the chair next to me, and I tried to pick her up, and she ran. She knew that was actually very funny. She knew exactly what I was going to pick her up to show her to you guys before I hung up, and she literally looked at me. It was like a cat. All right, hey! All right, I'm gonna go. No, that would be mom's dog now. All right, guys. Goodbye, TikTok. Goodbye, YouTube. Same time tomorrow, 5 o'clock, 5 o'clock Central Time, 6 o'clock Eastern. Same time we did today, guys. All right. Oh my God. All right. I'm hanging up on YouTube. Bye, guys. Oh my God.